This video marks the official beginning of my Survivor Series review series where in the course of the next couple of weeks I will take a look back at every Survivor Series show from the first one in 1987 all the way up to 2012. 2013 won't be included in this series because of course I already reviewed that show last year after it happened. You can find that review on this channel. But 26 different reviews to do, oh boy. It's fun and a little bit exhausting after a while, but I enjoy doing these series, and this is the last of the Big Four review series that I had on the docket to do. So let's get this bad boy underway. Now, as is traditionally the case when it comes to the Rumble and WrestleMania and SummerSlam, I talk about the history and some of the events surrounding the creation of the event as much as the actual first event itself. And that'll be no different here for Survivor Series 1987 because I think it is incredibly important to give that proper historical context and help you understand why this event came to be and why it became such a success. In terms of Survivor Series, really quickly though, this has always been, or at least it used to be, my favorite gimmick pay-per-view, even more so than the Royal Rumble. I used to love Survivor Series, and I know I'm not alone. I miss the way Survivor Series used to be and what it was supposed to be about. And when you go back and watch some of the original Survivor Series and some of the awesome things that used to happen leading up to it, the event, its actual self, the matches themselves, you understand why maybe older fans like me get pissed off when we know what Survivor Series can be, what it used to be, maybe what it should be, and what it is now. It's basically bastardized the concept of Survivor Series, and it's just another WWE pay-per-view. And that's a shame because this is one of the traditional Big Four pay-per-views. And the interesting thing about this is this was technically the second of the Big Four pay-per-views to come into existence. And the primary reason, let me rephrase that. There are two primary reasons why this pay-per-view came to be. Number one was Vince McMahon and the WWF Titan Tower machine wanting to capitalize off of the tremendous financial windfall and success that was the Hulk Hogan Andre the Giant feud. You have the irresistible force and the immovable object feuding with each other, and you have a license to print money, basically. I know fans have been led to believe over the years, and the WWE has helped to lead you to believe over the years that the greatest rivalry of all time might be Austin versus McMahon and Austin versus The Rock, and those are tremendous rivalries. There's no question about it. Or that WWF versus WCW is the greatest rivalry of all time, and again, those were all great rivalries, and they definitely deserve their spot at the table. But so does Hogan versus Andre. This is a rivalry that had a match that drew over 90,000 people at WrestleMania 3 that only idiots like Dave Meltzer and the sheep that believe everything he says think didn't draw 90 plus thousand people to the Pontiac Silverdome. This was a rivalry and a feud that was able to lead to the creation of the other three of the Big Four pay-per-views that are still around to this day. Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, and freaking SummerSlam. All three of those events were launched off of the backs of the Hogan-Andre rivalry. That's not disputed. That is indisputable fact, period. And when you look at this with Survivor Series 1987, and then later on they would create the Royal Rumble in 1988. At that time, the first one wasn't a pay-per-view. Later years it would be. But on the USA Network, it drew a monster rating of, I think it was like 8 at the time. That was a tremendous cable television rating. And the featured event there, in a lot of ways, was not even the Rumble match. That show was originally set up to be the spotlight showcase piece, being Hogan and Andre in their contract signing for the big monster rematch that was going to take place the next month on NBC, and the main event, February 5th, 1988. A match, by the way, there's two Dave Hebners that drew 33 million viewers. 33 million viewers for all of the great shit that Austin and Rock was, or WWF versus WCW was, or Austin versus McMahon was. Let me know when they ever drew 33 million viewers for any fucking thing. Hogan and Andre did. And then, of course, it led to Mega Powers versus Mega Bucks at SummerSlam '88, and it was still Hogan Andre. So to me, the most significant and important um, and perhaps greatest rivalry of all time to me has always been Hogan versus Andre. But it's also important to understand the time period and what was going on in the wrestling business as well to understand why Survivor Series came to be. At this time in 1987, while Vince wasn't the only show in town, the AWA was dying. WCCW was dying at a rate as about as quickly as the Von Erich boys were, frankly. A lot of the other territories had folded and went under or were about to go under. Vince only really had one major competitor left. He only had one major threat to his uh, dominance on the national and international wrestling landscape, and that was the Crockett territory, Jim Crockett Promotions. And Survivor Series 1987 was in part a way for Vince McMahon to really smack down Crockett and that territory and to really establish his dominance and really help cement his company as the dominant force in professional wrestling or sports entertainment, whatever the hell you want to call it. I have always laughed over the years when Vince would sit there and the people around him, fans, whatever, have always talked about things like Eric Bischoff revealing the results of taped Raws on live Nitros and talking about how underhanded and dirty that was. Well, that was karma coming to collect, bitch, and that's the truth. Because when you know the story of Survivor Series 1987 and understand that Vince McMahon went to the cable providers and gave them two options. He said, option A, you can carry Starrcade. But know that if you don't carry Survivor Series and you choose to carry Starrcade instead, you're not going to get WrestleMania 4. Or you could carry Survivor Series, and as a part of that deal, you'll get WrestleMania 4. Just think about this. In 1987, the WWF was such a dominant force in professional wrestling and, frankly, in the entertainment landscape as a whole, that Vince McMahon had enough leverage where he could basically dictate to these cable providers, which he largely did, and said, you're not going to show that other guy, even though he created his show first and it's been around since 1983. I took that idea and stole it and made it WrestleMania, and we'll always pretend that it was my great idea, even though it was Dusty's, da 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 da. He basically dictated what these other companies were going to do. He cut the rug right out from under Crockett, and it was less than a year later that Crockett ended up selling out to Ted Turner. So for all the people that ever sit there and say that, these guys did this and this guy did that, and Vince isn't that bad. No, Vince was bad. Vince was terrible. He was ruthless. He was a businessman, a hell of a businessman, a hell of a marketing and promotional guy. I've always felt that was his biggest strength, was not the wrestling aspect, but the promotion, the marketing, packaging, and at this time the company was on fire. Now, when you look at the show itself, one common knock I think about '87 is the fact that maybe it was too much in terms of the matches went too long, but I'm okay with that because, man, this show works for me from a historical standpoint going back and watching. Just look at the first tag match alone, the 5-on-5 elimination match. Nowadays, you get one of those, and the people are fucking flipping because they're happy that we're getting one of those. You used to have an entire show like that. On one team in the opening match, your first ever Survivor Series 5-on-5 traditional tag match. The babyface side was Randy Savage, Jake Roberts, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Those were the 5 guys on one team. Tremendous amount of talent in the WWF at this time. If you go to the other side, you have, you got guys like Hercules and Danny Davis and Ron Bass, but you got the Honky Tonk Man. You got Harley Race on that side. You've got managers like the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, and Bobby the Brain Heenan. And this was another genius of Vince, was being able to buy out talent from other territories and put it all together. I mean, this card is freaking loaded. Just imagine if you had a pay-per-view today. You could build multiple compelling singles feuds if you had any creative bones in your body at all, with talents like the Macho Man and Jake the Snake and Steamboat and Beefcake and Duggan and the Honky Tonk Man and Harley Race. Could you imagine what you could do? And these guys were in the curtain jerker spot. They opened this fucking show. What I always liked about Survivor Series 2 back in the day, when it actually used to be Survivor Series and not just the name anymore, and where it's basically a traditional WWE pay per view, what I always liked about Survivor Series was that, whereas with the Royal Rumble, part of the appeal to me has always been that heels could wrestle heels, faces could fight faces. It was truly the epitome of everything and anything goes. Here you had that, well, what if these guys teamed up, and what if these guys teamed up, and what if this team versus faced this team? I mean, this shit, I absolutely loved it. The other thing I always loved about these tag matches, when you put all these random people together, the WWF used to do a tremendous job of interweaving the stories and the characters and making everything work and being able to break off of it and making that work as well. And then you'd get the interviews where you got all these different guys trying to pop off about all these different things. Just fucking outstanding stuff. Hell, look at this show back in '87. You had a 20-minute women's 5-on-5 tag match. You could take a 3 or 4 month stretch of Divas title matches on pay-per-views, and the combined length of time, in most cases, doesn't add up to the 20 minutes that this tag match got. It probably got too much time, to be fair, but just think about that for a second. And even in this match, you have the fabulous Moolah, sensational Sherry. I mean, you had some talent in this match as well. And then you got the 5-team versus 5-team, the 20-man Survivor Series tag match. Look at some of the tag teams that were involved in this. Strike Force, the Fabulous Rougeaus, the Killer Bees, the British Bulldogs, the Hart Foundation, Demolition. I mean, those are some tremendous tag teams. And when you go back and watch some of these older shows, I think to me, one of the things that always stands out, similar as to when you go watch some of these shows from the Monday Night Wars Attitude Era time frame, was not only was the top great, and not only was the middle of the card great, but the tag team division was tremendous. Great feuds, great storylines, great talents, tremendous depth in the division. Those are a lot of common threads between those two great eras in the history of the WWF. Strong at the top, strong throughout, and a tremendous tag team division. And it's very striking when you go back and watch a show like Survivor Series 1987 and you see the bullshit that you get today, and you're like, the top sucks, the middle sucks, and the tag team division is also almost non-existent. How did this happen? And why does the WWE still continuously de-emphasize the tag team division at a time where they desperately need to re-emphasize it? One of the common threads with the two greatest eras in your company's history is that you had a strong and deep and talented, loaded, compelling tag team division. Just think about that. All these tag teams under one company. Just tremendous. And then, of course, you get to the main event, and it's Hogan and Andre and their teams facing off. And, of course, this is not going to be some visual masterpiece, but it delivered the goods, and it did what it needed to do. And, I go back again, like I said, and I look at this show, and even like in the main event, I used to love how Vince would do this back in the day. You bring in somebody new to the territory like a Bam Bam Bigelow, and he got a lot of shine there. In fact, he got more shine than Hogan did in the main event. Andre's team went over, which was the right thing to do at the time, and this ended up being a tremendous show, a huge success for the WWF, WWE. And I think in some ways that's why Vince still, even though he's gone away from what Survivor Series actually is supposed to be, he still keeps the name around even in 2014. I don't think you ever could view Vince as the most sentimental guy. He's a guy that's willing to do this and change that. But, Survivor Series still stands. It's still around. It is the second oldest of the big four pay-per-views. Without a successful Survivor Series, you might not have a Royal Rumble. You might not have a SummerSlam. So I will always grade Survivor Series 1987 as an A-plus type of show, whether or not you view it as an A-plus show in terms of the in-ring action or not. But like I said, you look at the talent, loaded. The gimmick of the pay-per-view itself, outstanding. The attraction at the top of the card, the main event, tremendous. So many great things going for this great show that if you want to understanding from a historical standpoint of what the WWF used to be, what it can be, and what it should be, and what the Survivor Series pay-per-view can be, once was, and should be, and why so many older fans like me get so pissed off about what Survivor Series used to be compared to what it is now. You go back and watch Survivor Series 1987 and you find out all you need to know.